The Vietnam War had a long-lasting impact on not only Vietnam, but on the world as a whole. If you are interested in the Vietnam War and its many operations and battles, then you can watch our previous video, as this video will only focus on the aftermath of the war. Fall of Saigon. The Vietnam War ended on the 30th of April 1975, when the People's Army of Vietnam and the Viet Cong were able to conquer the capital of South Vietnam, thus bringing an end to the war and the non-communist regime. Vietnam would now be under communist rule, with the official name being the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. After the communists took over, Hanoi, the capital city of North Vietnam, now became the capital of unified Vietnam. The flag and anthem of the North Vietnamese became the official symbols of the country. As Vietnam was now a unified country, the Viet Cong as a guerrilla faction was no longer necessary, so it was dissolved. The new government focused on collective farming and developing heavy industry. They seized private properties and their owners were sent to the new economic zones to clear land. The seized properties were given to former Viet Cong and members of the North Vietnamese Communist Party or People's Army of Vietnam. The new economic zones program was implemented by the Vietnamese Communist government, and it involved migrating North Vietnamese people into regions formerly under the Republic of Vietnam. Southerners were, in turn, forcibly relocated into uninhabited forest areas. Over 1 million Northerners were relocated, and 750,000 to over 1 million Southerners were displaced from their homes. Due to such expansive reforms, it didn't take long before Vietnam was hit by severe shortages of food and other basic necessities. On the political side of things, Vietnam focused on improving foreign relations and trying to steer away from war, prioritizing good relations and peace. They became increasingly aligned with the Soviet Union by joining the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance and signing a treaty of friendship, which was more of a military pact. Vietnam was still subjected to trade embargoes by the US and its allies, which caused the inflation in Vietnam to increase. The country's public security apparatus controlled every aspect of people's lives. Censorship was very strict and conservative, with most artistic works that were created before the communist government being banned. All religions were reorganized into state-controlled churches. Any negative comments about the Communist Party, the government, Ho Chi Minh, or communism in general might earn the person the tag of Phan Dong, reactionary. This meant that the reactionary would face consequences such as being harassed by the police, being fired from their workplace, or even being sent to jail. The government, however, was not able to prevent people from leaving the country. In many cases, security officers were bribed or directly involved in helping people escape Vietnam. The government was also not successful in suppressing the black market, where people could buy food and banned literature at a high price. The war lasted from the 30th of April 1975 till the 11th of October 1992, and it consisted of a series of armed conflicts, mainly between the several communist factions trying to gain influence in Indochina after the communist victory of the Vietnam War. The primary reason the war started was because of the continued raids by the Khmer Rouge in Vietnamese territory in an attempt to retake the lands they lost during the Vietnam War. The Khmer Rouge was the government in Cambodia, with its leader being Pol Pot. During their reign in Cambodia, millions of people died from starvation, diseases, and executions. They even conducted the Cambodian genocide in 1975 to 1979, which was a systematic killing of various different cultures of people living in Cambodia. Nearly 1.5 to 2 million people, including ethnic Vietnamese, were executed, as the Khmer Rouge saw them as a potential threat. The Vietnamese government consisted of many figures who opposed Pol Pot and his regime because of the aforementioned genocide and the differences in foreign allies, with the Soviet Union supporting Vietnam and China aiding Cambodia. These reasons and the attacks on Vietnam is why they wanted to get rid of the Khmer Rouge. In December 1978, Vietnamese troops invaded Cambodia, reaching the capital in January 1979 and the border of Thai in spring of the same year. The remaining Khmer Rouge forces settled permanently in the Thai-Cambodian border region. They operated from inside Thai territory, attacking the pro-Hanoi People's Republic of Kampuchea's government. Vietnamese forces frequently attacked the Khmer Rouge bases inside Thailand, which resulted in Thai soldiers stepping in and confronting the Vietnamese troops. Also in early 1979, the Sino-Vietnamese War began when China attacked Vietnam as a response to their occupation of Cambodia, as they were allies. They entered northern Vietnam and were able to capture several cities along the border. In March 1979, China ceased fire and left Vietnam, claiming that their mission was a success. The main reason China left, however, was because they feared a possible attack from Vietnam's new ally, the Soviet Union. Vietnamese forces stayed in Cambodia for a decade, and there was no significant change in the border, which implies that China's campaign was, in fact, a failure. Vietnam and China would continue to engage in small battles near their border for the next 12 years. After the Paris Peace Conference in 1989, the People's Army of Vietnam's forces withdrew from Cambodian territory. Regular troop engagements ended in the region after the conclusion of the 1991 Paris Peace Agreements. While there isn't an exact number of overall casualties of the Vietnam War, there are different estimates from various sources. For example, one such estimate was made by the American politologist R.J. Rummel that ranges from 1.5 million to 3.6 million. Nearly half of all deaths were civilians from both sides of Vietnam. Many Cambodian and Laotian people were caught in the crossfire of bombing operations, resulting in an estimate of over 300,000 casualties. In 1995, Vietnam released its official estimate of the casualties, which included 2 million civilians on both sides and some 1.1 million North Vietnamese and Viet Cong soldiers. According to the U.S. National Archives, 58,220 U.S. soldiers died in Vietnam, but many more died after the war. This was mainly caused by the effects of Agent Orange. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. military used a herbicide known as Agent Orange for strategic deforestation and destroying food sources. The use of this herbicide reached its peak during Operation Ranch Hand, where over 4.5 million acres of land was sprayed in Vietnam from 1961 to 1971. Exposure to Agent Orange was life-threatening. The chemicals caused several diseases and health-related issues, such as Parkinson's disease, different types of cancers, immune system dysfunction, B-cell leukemia, and much more. The herbicide damaged people's reproductive organs and cells, which meant that their children suffer severe birth defects. It is uncertain if some birth defects in Vietnam nowadays can be attributed to Agent Orange, as there hasn't been a definitive study. From 1962 to 1971, over 3 million US soldiers and up to 4 million Vietnamese were exposed to Agent Orange. This led to the death of over 300,000 US veterans and over 400,000 Vietnamese people. The effect the defoliant had on nature in Vietnam meant that reforestation was difficult or even impossible in many areas. The diversity of animal species was also impacted. The Vietnam War had serious consequences on the United States. US Congress replaced the military draft with an all-volunteer force, and the country's voting age was reduced to 18. The war also reduced the president's military authority, as explicit congressional approval was now required in order to send American forces into combat. This was called the War Powers Act. The involvement in the Vietnam War greatly damaged the US economy. Unwilling to raise taxes to pay for the war, President Johnson unleashed a cycle of inflation. In fact, inflation rose from 1.2 to 5.9% over the course of 5 years. This combined increase in both defense and social welfare spending in the mid to late 1960s is credited with beginning an era known as the Great Inflation, which continued until 1981. In general, the war in Vietnam made Americans more cynical and less trusting of the government and authority. Different forms of media have been and continue to be used in portraying, explaining, and giving a glimpse into the war. In the 1970s, the earliest movies after the war were produced, like Apocalypse Now and Taxi Driver. By now, there have been dozens of theatrical and television films about the war, alongside many documentaries. Some well-known movies are Rescue Dawn, Good Morning Vietnam, Full Metal Jacket, and Platoon. During the war, movies were also made as propaganda material, and they were often filmed in South Vietnam. The war has been the subject of numerous books that explore its history, politics, and the impact it had on not only Vietnam, but on the world as a whole. Some more notable examples include Vietnam, A History by Stanley Carnell, The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, and Matterhorn by Karl Merlantes. In order to commemorate those who lost their lives during the Vietnam War, many memorials have been constructed in both Vietnam and the USA. The most famous of which is the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., which honors members of the United States Armed Forces who served in the Vietnam War. Fall of Saigon. On the 30th of April 1975, Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, was occupied by the Communists. Vietnam would now be under Communist rule, with the official name being the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. Communist rule in Vietnam. With the Communists in power, Hanoi became the capital of unified Vietnam. The Viet Congs were disbanded as they were no longer needed. Millions of people were relocated from their homes and sent to new economic zones. This, in addition to collective farming and developing heavy industry being prioritized, caused shortages of food and other basic necessities in the country. The government focused on improving foreign relations and was mainly in collaboration with the Soviet Union. Third Indochina War. The war lasted from the 30th of April 1975 until the 11th of October 1992. It was fought between different communist factions trying to gain control in Indochina, mainly the communist Cambodian government, Khmer Rouge, and Vietnam. During the rule of Pol Pot, the leader of the communist government, various ethnic groups in Cambodia were systematically killed during the Cambodian genocide. During the war, the Vietnamese were successful in occupying Cambodia and removing the Khmer Rouge from power. As a response to this, China, as Cambodia's ally, attacked Vietnam. They were able to conquer a few cities, but eventually left because they were scared of the Soviet Union. The war concluded with the Paris Peace Agreements, signed in 1991. There is no accurate count of all the casualties, but some sources suggest that they range from 1.5 to 3.6 million, half of those being civilians. Effects of Agent Orange. Agent Orange was the main cause of deaths during and after the Vietnam War, specifically over 300,000 US veterans and over 400,000 Vietnamese people. It also caused several diseases and other issues. USA. As a result of the war, participation in the US military became voluntary and presidential military authority was decreased. Involvement in the Vietnam conflict also caused a rise of inflation in the US. Various movies and books have been made to portray the Vietnam War. Also, several memorials have been built to commemorate the fallen. This marks the end of our free video overview of the Vietnam War. Thank you for watching.